Hey guys, now that we have our environment variable set up so that we can get data into our application for kind of special things, I want to go ahead and set up a simple analytics system. All we're going to do is make it so that we can render a Rails partial to display a Google Tag Manager script. Really, you should only install, in my opinion, one script on your site or your web application, and it should be the Google Tag Manager. And then you can allow business people to add whatever scripts they want to inside of the Google Tag Manager, and it kind of extracts your developers from your business people that might want to add scripts for Facebook Pixel or for LinkedIn or a bunch of other different kind of scripts. They can just do it all in the Google Tag Manager. So we're going to have a really simple system here. I'm going to go into views. I'm going to go into layouts. I'm going to go into shared. I'm going to control click and say new file and then say underscore Google Tag Manager. I'm a big fan of just spelling out variables and names of files to make it super easy to know what you're actually wanting to put in there. I'm going to come over here. Now I'm in the Google Tag Manager here, and it says to paste this in the head and then paste this into the body. So I've got that same code copied into my little MISC thing here, and I'm just going to copy this code and put it in the Google Tag Manager. Now first note this first line here, rails.env.production ? That just basically says, hey listen, are we running in production mode or are we running in development mode? We really don't want to be tracking page views and actions in development or in test. We really only want to be doing that in production. So we're only going to render this script in production. And then notice also that I'm using this env value for the Google GTM account ID. Remember that was from the previous video where we have these environment variables that we want to now use in our application, but we're not going to store this env file in our repository. I'm going to go into get ignore. I don't see this .env file, so I'm going to add it at the bottom. And then now we won't put that into our repository. That's one key thing that we need to remember. I should have mentioned that in the previous video, but we'll mention it now. So we have this Google Tag Manager partial here that we can render. I'm going to go into the layouts, this application layout. It says put it high up into put this high up into the head element of this HTML document, so we're going to do that. And then we're going to also create one more file. We're just going to name this GTM noscript.html.erb. Here, I'll go to my MISC. And this is, if someone has JavaScript turned off on their browser, then this will allow us to still make some request to the tag manager to track the page view or to track that they're making this request without using JavaScript. JavaScript is the preferred way to do it, but people can do whatever they want to with their own browser. So this is another way to make this request to the tag manager to at least know that someone viewed the page even if they're not using JavaScript. So we have this in here. I'm going to come, it says to put this as high as you can above or in the body tag. So I'm just going to put it right here. GTM noscript. And then now we're only going to do this note in production. But if we're in production, it will render these partials, but notice that we're not going to have our Google account ID, especially for open source projects, and this is going to be an open source project. For an open source project, there's not going to be any, we don't want any of our private pieces of this application to be part of this public GitHub repository. So great. So now listen, I'm just going to click save here. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to refresh the page. Everything runs and works. I'm going to, real quick, I'm going to say if development, it's going to try to actually run that script. I'm going to open, just say click view page source, and look, it's actually doing this. Notice it's passing in ABC123, so nothing is really going to happen there. There's actually a bug in here. I'm glad I'm testing this because I say there's a bug. Maybe it's all good, but I'm expecting this ID to be kind of prepended onto this ID here, and it doesn't look like it's done that. Well, actually, now that I think about it, it is working. This is how JavaScript works. So this ABC123 is argument 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's argument number 5 for this function that is being called here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when this JavaScript function executes, the value of ABC123 is in this I variable, which is then appended to this ID. Let me show you how we can actually see that, because right now we're interpreting this JavaScript ourselves, and I know it may not be obvious how that's working, but I'm going to open up my JavaScript console or my developer tools, and then look, we can see that it failed to load this resource, but look, the ID is actually there because it's that part of the code is run inside of JavaScript. So listen, guys, I'm going to stop talking and so we can move on, but we've made it so that you can add analytics to your application really easy. The only thing you have to do when you clone this repository is you got to set your GTM account ID, and especially we'll need to mainly do that in production because that's when we really care about tracking things. So anyways, I hope this video helps. Figure out what your users are doing in your application and try to use that information to help build a better application for him. Thanks so much for watching. See ya.